They say you should never settle, that you should know your worth. But when your mother is sick, your bills are stacking like bricks, and the job rejections feel like daily reminders that you're invisible, you learn to settle. You survive. That's exactly where I was when I accepted the job at Holt Enterprises. It was a sleek building, glass and steel, polished to perfection. The kind of place where the elevators moved silently, the coffee machines were touchscreen, and every employee looked like they belonged on a LinkedIn billboard. And then there was me, Jamal Carter. Degree in engineering. Master's in data systems. 5 months unemployed. Wearing a suit I hadn't dry cleaned in 2 years, and shoes I'd glued together the night before. The job? Executive assistant. Way below my pay grade. But the offer came with health insurance, and my mom's diabetes meds were non-negotiable. So I said yes. Day one was a blur of fake smiles and overly firm handshakes. A woman named Kendra from HR walked me through the basics and handed me a badge. My face on that plastic card felt unreal, like I was impersonating someone who belonged here. People barely made eye contact. Some nodded politely. Others didn't even hide the stares. That look. You know the one. Like you just walked into a room you weren't invited to. I kept my head down, focused on the job, calendar management, supply orders, admin calls. I worked quietly, diligently, the way my mother taught me. Make yourself indispensable, she'd always say. Let your work do the talking. Around noon, I wandered into the break room. There were 2 long tables, both full. Laughter. Someone was doing an impersonation of someone else. People were eating sushi, salads, talking about yacht clubs and weekend getaways. I quietly took my tray and sat at the far corner of a small 2-person table near the vending machine. It smelled faintly of burnt popcorn. I didn't mind. Halfway through my sandwich, I heard it. "Those shoes must have been passed down by Harriet Tubman herself," someone snorted. There was laughter. I didn't turn around. I knew better than to give them the reaction they wanted. The rest of the day passed slowly. I finished every task an hour early, helped 2 people with a printing issue, and even restocked the supply closet, just because it looked messy. Before heading out, I called my mom. She asked how it went. I told her it was fine, that they seemed nice, that I was lucky. She said she was proud of me. And for a moment, I believed it too. But as I walked out of that shining building, past the marble lobby and the glass doors, I caught a glimpse of myself in the reflection. Same glued shoes, same tired eyes. Only now, the weight on my shoulders wasn't from my backpack. It was from knowing I wasn't just here to work. I was here to endure. If the first week at Holt Enterprises felt cold, the second felt colder still. It started with the small things. My email access would randomly go offline. Tasks I had already completed would somehow disappear from the system. And when I gently brought it up, I was told to double-check your work next time. Always with a polite smile, always loud enough for others to hear. But I didn't complain. That's what I'd learned. That people like me didn't get to complain. We just had to be twice as good, work twice as hard, and stay silent. So I worked. Late nights became routine. I covered for others when they dropped the ball, especially when the screw-ups belonged to Jordan, the CEO's golden boy. I fixed his schedules, corrected his errors, even took the blame once when a report was submitted a day late. He thanked me once, then laughed with others about how I was the office butler. Even the janitor, Mr. Elijah, pulled me aside one evening. "You keep bending, son. Eventually, you'll break." I smiled. "I've bent before. Still here." He didn't smile back. Then came the Monday meeting. It was a weekly all-staff presentation. Dozens of us seated around a sleek glass conference room. Bradley Holt, CEO, founder, and the walking definition of smug, walked in 10 minutes late, sipping espresso and adjusting his tie like a movie villain. He was always sharply dressed, always making sure his Rolex caught the light. He never raised his voice. He didn't have to. He'd mastered the art of humiliation through condescension. During the meeting, he paused mid-sentence and pointed directly at me. "You, read the numbers from slide 8. I didn't even have access to the slides. That was Jordan's job. Still, I leaned forward, scanned the screen, and read them, accurately, confidently. He cut me off midway. "Is that how we speak at board-level meetings now? What is that? Brooklyn? Bronx?" There was laughter. Not from everyone, but enough to make the silence from others feel worse. I stared down at my notepad. Later that day, I passed by the executive dining room. The door was slightly open. Inside, I heard Holt's voice, low and dripping with disdain. "Kid acts like he belongs. I swear, sometimes it's like bringing the help to a gala." Someone laughed. Another chimed in, "He does clean up nice, though. Maybe he can valet our cars next week." More laughter. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. And then I walked away. That night, I stayed at my desk until the office emptied out. No one noticed, no one cared, except Mr. Elijah, the janitor. He handed me a cup of tea, cheap from the vending machine, but warm. "You don't have to take it, you know," he said gently. "I don't have a choice," I whispered back. He didn't argue. He just nodded slowly. "You do. You just ain't ready to see it yet." But the truth was, I wasn't ready. Because somewhere deep down, I still believed that if I worked hard enough, if I stayed quiet long enough, someone would see me. Someone would finally say, "You belong here too." I didn't know it yet, but that belief would be broken in a way I never imagined. And it would all begin with a single tray of food. The email arrived late Thursday night, stamped with urgency and ego. "All hands lunch tomorrow. Mandatory attendance. Location: 42nd floor event hall. Dress accordingly." It was signed off by Jordan, of course, Mr. Holt's golden boy. I barely had time to process it before my inbox flooded with rescheduled meetings, catering forms, and seating charts. I stayed past midnight organizing it all. Not that anyone noticed. Friday came fast. Too fast. I threw on my best shirt, still slightly wrinkled no matter how many times I ironed it, and polished my shoes one more time. I told myself today would go fine. Just stay invisible. Do your job. The elevator to the 42nd floor was packed with suits and perfume. Laughter bounced off the steel walls. I stayed in the back, like usual. The event hall looked like a luxury wedding. Crystal chandeliers, silver-draped tables, polished floors. I checked that everything was in place, double-checked the CEO's seating preferences, then quietly stepped into the buffet line once the event began. Most employees found their assigned seats. I didn't have one. No one told me where to sit. I didn't mind. I just grabbed a small plate, salmon, rice, a tiny roll, and scanned the room. Every table was full. Dozens of faces, none familiar enough to ask for a seat beside. A few glanced at me with that look, the one that says, "Not here." Then I heard it. Assistants eat after the important people, or wherever there's space. The voice was unmistakable, loud enough to hush the room. Bradley Holt stood near the head table, smiling with that same polished venom he always wore. Laughter followed. Light at first, then louder. People looked away. Some looked at me. Not one offered a seat. I looked down at my plate. The rice was already cooling. The salmon smelled faintly of lemon and shame. I didn't say a word. I walked to the far end of the hallway, just outside the main room, found a small corner near a column, and quietly sat on the carpeted floor, cross-legged, careful not to spill. A few people passed by. None stopped. A few took out phones. I kept eating. One bite, then another. I could hear the clinking of glasses inside, Mr. Holt giving a toast, people cheering, and somewhere in the silence between those sounds, I felt it, something inside me cracking, quietly, like ice under pressure. I kept eating, until someone whispered, laughing just loud enough, "Look at him," like a damn servant. I looked up. A camera pointed in my direction. Flash. I lowered my head again. The smile I tried to fake for the camera didn't last. My lips trembled. My hands shook slightly. And then, a single tear slipped from my eye, landing softly on the edge of my paper napkin. I wiped it quickly before anyone noticed. But they had already noticed. That was the whole point. I finished my meal, stood up slowly, walked to the nearest trash bin, and threw the rest away. Back at my desk, I stared at the screen. Emails buzzed in, tasks stacked up. Life went on. But something in me had shifted. Not anger. Not yet. Just silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. And deep down, I knew this story wasn't over. Not even close. At first, I thought maybe I was just being paranoid. The way people were looking at me on Monday morning, eyes darting, conversations halting when I walked by, it was different. Heavier. I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and saw it. A subject line in bold. "Did you see the video?" I clicked. The footage was grainy, clearly shot on someone's phone. It showed me, sitting cross-legged on the floor in that hallway corner, paper plate in hand. The camera zoomed in slightly as I scooped a bite of salmon with my plastic fork. Then it panned to Holt's smirking face. The caption was simple. "This is how Holt treats his team." For a second, I couldn't breathe. My first instinct was shame. I felt naked, exposed. Like every ounce of dignity I'd tried to preserve that day had just been undone. And then, my inbox lit up. People started reacting. Some sent supportive messages. "This isn't right. You didn't deserve that." But more often, it was silence. Or worse, gaslighting. One anonymous email simply said, "You should have just stood up." By noon, the video was everywhere. LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Reddit. A few influencers even picked it up. Corporate racism exposed kind of headlines. But inside Holt Enterprises, there was no sympathy. There was tension. Like a storm was brewing. But somehow, I was the lightning. HR called me in. The same woman who had once walked me through the onboarding process now sat across from me, cold and robotic. "Jamal, we're disappointed that private internal footage was released in a way that misrepresents the company culture." I blinked. "I didn't film it." She sighed, like I was exhausting her. "Regardless, your continued presence is a distraction." And then came the envelope. Hush money. They didn't call it that, of course not. They called it a severance incentive with confidentiality agreement. I didn't touch it. Then the door opened, and in walked Mr. Holt. His suit was perfectly pressed. His Rolex still caught the light. His smile, still the same thin blade. He sat beside her and leaned back, relaxed. "You knew what this was, Jamal," he said casually. "You got your little moment. You want to play the victim now?" I didn't respond. I just stared at the document, at the part where I'd be paid for my silence. He leaned in closer. "Take the deal. Or we can remind everyone this isn't about race. This is about you breaking protocol. Filming during a private event? That's grounds for termination, Jamal." He winked. Like this was a game. Like I wasn't supposed to fight back. I left the office without saying a word. No one made eye contact. Not Jordan. Not the people I helped with reports. Not even the intern I once defended from a snide remark. Back home, I dropped my bag by the door and sat down on the edge of the couch. My mom was in the kitchen, stirring a pot of soup. She turned on the TV, and there it was again. Me. On the floor. The segment was short, a blip between news and weather. But it was enough. She froze, watched it, wordless. When she turned to me, her eyes were wet. "They made you do that?" she whispered. I looked away. I didn't have anywhere else to sit. She walked over, sat beside me, held my hand in silence, and in that silence I felt it, the weight of 1,000 other moments like this. Not just mine, ours. That night, I stared at the ceiling. I didn't sleep, because deep down, something had finally snapped. Not just in me, but in the world watching, and I wasn't going to be silent anymore. I didn't plan to write it. Honestly, I didn't think anyone would care if I did. I wasn't famous. I wasn't powerful. I didn't even have more than a couple hundred followers online, most of them old college friends or family. But the weight of it all wouldn't let me sleep. The footage, the silence, my mother's face when she saw me on the floor, Mr. Holt's smirk as he offered me hush money like I was a problem to pay off. It all kept replaying in my head like a cruel loop. So, sometime after midnight, I opened a blank page, and for the first time in my life, I wrote without editing myself to sound polite. I didn't name the company. I didn't insult anyone. I just told the truth. My name is Jamal Carter. I'm not here to go viral. I'm not here for revenge. I just want to breathe. A week ago, I was made to eat on the floor at a company event while people in suits laughed and recorded me. Not because I caused trouble, not because I was late, just because I was seen as less. I've worked hard my whole life. I studied harder. I earned every degree I've got. And I took this job, not because it was my dream, but because my mother needed her medication. Because dignity doesn't always pay the bills. I didn't eat on the floor because I had to. I did it because I was tired of fighting alone. This isn't about me. It's about every black professional who's had to shrink themselves to survive. About every time we're told to be grateful, while our humanity is stripped one layer at a time. I'm done being quiet. I posted it on LinkedIn first. Then I copied it to Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I turned off my phone. I didn't want to know what people thought. But by morning, I didn't have a choice. 20,000 shares, 50,000, 100,000. Celebrities reposted it. Activists, athletes, people I'd watched on TV were quoting me. Civil rights groups issued public statements. Former employees of Holt Enterprises started speaking out. Some posted under fake names, terrified. Others came out boldly, sharing their own humiliations, silent punishments, racist jokes told in boardrooms no one else ever got to hear. It wasn't just a letter anymore. It was a movement. News outlets reached out, podcasts, journalists, late-night hosts referenced it in their monologues. One tweet hit 1 million likes. He didn't just eat on the floor, he ate their arrogance and turned it into fuel. And while the world burned with outrage, inside Holt Enterprises, they panicked. The company posted a half-hearted statement, something about our commitment to inclusion and internal reviews. It was hollow. Everyone knew it. Mr. Holt made a video. He didn't apologize. He didn't even say my name. He just smirked. Sometimes things are taken out of context, but we're proud of our culture. That smirk? It only poured gasoline on the fire. Protests started brewing outside their skyscraper headquarters. Hashtags flooded timelines. Stand with Jamal became a rallying cry. And I just sat there, on the edge of my bed, stunned. Not because people believed me, but because, for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel alone. The day after, I received an email. No subject line, no greeting. Just one sentence. You started something you can't control. No name, but I knew who it was. And he was right. Because I hadn't started a fight. I had lit a fuse, and the explosion was coming. They say power protects the powerful, but not when the world is watching. Not when the streets outside your glass tower start to flood with voices louder than any boardroom ever dared to be. By the end of the week, protesters lined the sidewalk outside Holt Enterprises skyscraper. Students, activists, community leaders, mothers, fathers, former employees, strangers. They held signs with my words on them. I didn't eat on the floor because I had to. Silence is compliance. This is not professionalism. This is humiliation. Someone printed out stills from the video. Me sitting on the floor, paper plate in hand, and plastered them across bus stops. It wasn't about me anymore. It was about everyone like me. Inside the company, chaos bloomed. 2 major sponsors cut ties. A major account, worth millions, pulled their contract in protest. News crews camped outside the lobby, catching footage of employees sneaking out with hats low and heads down. The board of directors, once loyal to a fault, started whispering. They weren't loyal to Holt. They were loyal to profit. And right now, Holt was poison. He tried to fight it, of course. Released a formal video statement, perfectly rehearsed. Claimed he was deeply saddened by the public's reaction. Talked about retraining initiatives and forging new diversity paths. But the internet wasn't buying it, especially not when another video leaked, this one of Holt at a private function just weeks earlier, making a joke about how inclusion is just a new PR trick. The fuse had reached the dynamite. On Monday morning, they called an emergency board meeting. The internal memo leaked within 10 minutes. By Tuesday, Holt's nameplate had been removed from his office door. By Wednesday, he was out, forced to resign, disgraced, disavowed, done. They tried to keep it quiet, spin it as a planned transition. But the cameras caught it. As he walked out the front doors, sunglasses on, jaw clenched, dozens of reporters swarmed. He didn't answer questions. He didn't smile. But as he passed the last line of protesters, someone stepped forward. Me. I wasn't holding a sign. I wasn't shouting. I was just standing there, in a pressed shirt, in shoes I'd finally been able to replace. Calm, straight-backed, silent. He saw me, stopped, removed his sunglasses, walked closer until we stood just a few feet apart. And in a low, bitter voice, he muttered, "This is just a trend." People forget. I didn't flinch. I looked him dead in the eye and said, "But not this time." He didn't respond. He just turned and walked into the crowd, no longer protected by tinted windows or title cards. I didn't cheer. I didn't cry. I just stood there, letting the weight of it all settle. Not because it was over, but because this time it had finally begun. Months passed. The headlines faded. The protests quieted. The world, as it always does, moved on to the next outrage. But I didn't. Because for the first time in my life, I had something more powerful than anger. I had clarity. The job offers rolled in fast. Tech firms, startups, even a few Fortune 500s, all eager to show how inclusive they were now. Some dangled 6-figure salaries, relocation bonuses, flexible diversity leadership roles. They didn't want me. They wanted my story, my survival. My face on their website, framed by a carefully worded quote. I said no. Instead, I walked away from all of it and walked toward something bigger. I cashed out my savings, reached out to a few community leaders, spoke with lawyers, found a tiny office space in a converted storefront in the neighborhood where my mother raised me. And that's where it started. Stand Up Collective, a nonprofit for people who were silenced at work, for people who were passed over, stepped on, and told to be grateful while choking on disrespect. We gave them more than a voice. We gave them legal support, mental health resources, public platforms. We listened, and they came, in droves, from janitors to junior executives, from nurses to night clerks. Some had stories worse than mine. Some had never told anyone before. I wasn't a symbol anymore. I was a bridge. One afternoon, I was invited to speak at a high school not far from where I grew up. I almost said no. I didn't see myself as someone who belonged behind a podium, but I went. The gym was filled with students, some sleepy, some curious, some just glad to be out of class. I told them the story, not the viral version, not the LinkedIn version, the real one, about my mother, my shoes, that plate of cold salmon, that moment when I chose silence over screaming because I didn't want to lose everything. And when I was done, there was a pause, a quiet that stretched into something sacred. Then the applause came. And then, a moment I'll never forget. A young black student, maybe 16, skinny, nervous, holding a backpack too big for his frame, walked up to me after. He didn't say much at first, just stood there. Finally, he whispered, "You made me believe I can speak, too." I looked at him, this kid who reminded me of everything I used to feel. I smiled and said, "You don't need permission to be treated with dignity." He nodded, and in his eyes I saw something shift. That's when I knew. This story wasn't about eating on the floor. It was about rising from it.